Hi everybody, this is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It's the week of November 5th. And just a reminder, make sure you grab the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this presentation on YouTube. You can get that probably just as a link on YouTube, as well as just going to our website, holygroundexplorations.com. Okay, we always start off with news bites. Israel, Likud, the opposition party, but the strongest party in Israel. Here we go. Israel must strike Iran by year's end if there's no nuclear deal. This is the leadership of Likud. And going on to say, knowing that we're the opposition party, we want to give full backing to the government whenever they decide to attack Tehran. And just if I rewind real quick, remember I said this report is November. By the end of the year, the sand is running out of the hourglass. New subject, COVID. I long for the day we don't talk about COVID. Israel now is presenting the case that they're making to the population there about vaccinating ages 5 through 11. We're starting to see resistance to all of this. One of our reports today will be the protest rallies that are going on. This is a head scratcher, but it is the world we're living in, and it's not mandated, but it's thought-provoking to think that ages 5 years old, vaccinations. What's going on in Europe at this point in time is that there's these discussions, even though they're the climate control sort of stuff, but the EU is basically saying that they're scheduling talks with Iran, scheduled to resume on November 29th in Vienna, the nuclear accords, the nuclear deal. It's been a long stalled negotiation, and it's set to move forward. The US position is saying that there is a deal possible if Tehran is serious. Don't hold your breath. And then finally, last night, big news out of Israel, because we're going to talk about the flimsiness of the Lapid-Bennett coalition, but they did approve the budget, which was a major hurdle for them. Have they failed to do that, I think there had been a call for new elections, but the vote was 61 to 59, 5 in the morning, but for the first time now in 3.5 years, Israel actually has a national budget. Well, let's go on to our major articles again, thinking about the coalition government. With that even in place, again, I hope you're aware of how the government works in Israel. You have different parties, you have to form a coalition, and so each party has a certain amount of seats. You have to have more than 4 seats in order to be recognized as a national party. The craziness of what's taken place is that you have somebody like Bibi Netanyahu with Likud that has 36 seats. And then you have the current Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, whose party has no more than 6 seats. Some would say 4. So imagine that, how this all works out with horse trading and negotiations or whatever. But this government is kind of held together with shoestrings at this point in time. And again, it was a rotation government. So you have Bennett saying, I'll take 2 years, and then Lapid, which is more of a center-left candidate, will take the next 2 years. And then this just captured that Prime Minister Bennett doesn't believe that the coalition government will last long enough for Foreign Minister Yair Lapid to actually become Prime Minister. He says, I just don't believe that we'll get to that point in time for the rotation to happen. He's quoted on Channel 12 in Israel. And basically, the Prime Minister's office confirmed this report. That was prior to the passing of this budget, but it's still paper thin. The government, this is Bennett Lapid's government. The Israeli government is considering issuing a state of emergency. We're going to talk about defense here in a moment, but it's not because of the thousands of enemy rockets coming from Gaza or the threat from the north. The state of emergency will be due to climate change. And so as for Israel's leadership, statistics are showing that Prime Minister Bennett has close to no public support, while the former Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, remains the preference of the majority of Jews in Israel. So that's that coalition. Again, national news, what's the threat? Rockets from the north? No. Bennett's in Europe, and it's climate control, and this is all political, right? All right, then we go on to what's called New World Order. And as I mentioned, this is COVID related. You don't get a lot of media news covering this, but there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of Israel taking to the streets in Tel Aviv, demonstrating against what's called the Green Passport, which mandates that 3 COVID jabs or a negative test are required in order to enter any leisure venue, any sporting event, any hotels, or any restaurants. So there's this weekly protest that's taking place. Keep in mind, Israel is the only country in the world which mandates a third booster jab for twice vaccinated people in order to access these venues. And so you've got that going on. You've got the concern, are we actually going to vaccinate our 5-year-olds? Like I said, I look forward to the time that we don't have to deal with this COVID issue. But as you know, our ministry is all about taking people to Israel. And so we have to track this carefully and closely. And even though Israel is, quote, open, at this point in time, we need to read the fine print. What will it take for us to actually go? That's what we're tracking. And then we have the threat from the north. Israel's preparing to deploy, you'll see the pictures here in the slide, a massive blimp in the north of the country that will provide advance warnings of missile or drone threats coming from Hezbollah in Lebanon. The bottom line here is that tensions are increasing between Israel and Hezbollah, escalating really since the summer. 5 rocket attacks emanating from Lebanon, targeting northern Israel. That took place in May, July, and August. The IDF over the summer also shot down a drone launched by Hezbollah from an Iranian proxy that crossed the border from Lebanon into Israeli territory. So again, the storm clouds, the war drums are beating in this area, and unfortunately I think it's just a matter of time until a major escalation takes place from Hezbollah out of the north. Next week, we'll talk a little bit about that Syrian Golan Heights, the activity that's taking place. Suffice it to say, once again, Israel is not keeping a blind eye to this. Last week, there was actually, and this is pretty unique, it doesn't happen often, it was a daylight time attack, rocket attack, a fighter jet attack outside of Damascus. And again, Israel is saying there's no way that we're going to allow precision missiles to get into the hands of Hezbollah or along that Golan Heights Syrian border. peace process. How's that going? Here, check out these numbers. Referring to the peace process with Israel, and keep in mind, Biden is hoping that he can pull himself out of this Afghanistan mess and make a dent, whether it's with this Iranian nuclear deal or with the two-state solution. I can make it work into Israel. But keep in mind, two parties are needed, right? 68% of Palestinians say that they oppose any kind of negotiation with Israel that's led by the U.S. or / the Biden administration, close to 70%. The Biden administration's hope of reviving this peace process between Israel and the Palestinians is suffering major blows. The bottom line is that the Palestinians' options, they're choosing more violence, rioting, and an intifada. And then also keep in mind that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians want nothing to do with Mahmoud Abbas. They want him to step down and step away. So there's no order to all of this. And it's, again, a cauldron that's just bubbling. I'm trying to think of a high note to end upon. I know I'm going to keep this slide every week, I think, by this time, because it simply says Dan Stolbarger status, and it's my therapy. I said, I don't need therapy, I just need to go to Israel. We still long for the opportunity to bring people to the land. We believe that it changes lives, especially for those people that love their Bibles. The Word of God just comes alive. And so let's continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for wisdom, pray that we can somehow navigate our way through this COVID vaccination mess that we're in these days. And so we long for the day. Please keep us in your prayers. We can use your support. It's been a year and a half since we've been to Israel, and we do have a trip scheduled for March. You can check that out on our website, holygroundexplorations.com. And if you're thinking about going, give us a holler. Let us know. We'll get your name down, and we'll give you as much information and keep you in the loop. So that's it for this week. God bless you, and shalom.